Hey y'all, it's Erin and Simon with Assets and Arbitrage. And today we're going to be talking to you about why being strategic is important. It's going to give you a little bit of comprehensive knowledge on how certain things affect you and the things that you can do in order to mitigate it. You want to talk to them about Dr. Neely Fuller?
Well, at first I wanted to get some things out of the way. I know the show airs on Monday morning, but we're filming it here today, Sunday afternoon. So we want to give a shout out and say Happy Mother's Day
Happy Mother's Day.
to all the mothers out there. Hope you have a blessed, wonderful, joyous day. So we want to get that out there. Two, we've been getting a lot of feedback from some of our veterans. So we want to give a shout out to our veterans out there, right?
Yes.
Armed Forces members. We want to give a shout out to all my Armed Forces members. Salute, appreciate and definitely appreciate your service. And yeah, just wanted to, we like to shout out people from time to time.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we really kind of want to point out is Dr. Neely Fuller talks about areas of activity in which the truth of the matter is there's a war going on outside. No man is safe, right? And you want to know, what does the war encompass? What are some of the assaults that you have on me? And then I can come up with a plan to mitigate, circumvent, evade, whatever I need to do for my family to have the best outcomes. And this is Simon's repertoire.
Well,
Yeah, no, it
that.
is. You talked about it. You broke it down real well, and I just want you to break it down for them like you broke it down for me.
Well, there's nine. Actually, there's nine areas of activity of people that they say are dominated
Yes.
by the dominant society. And then this was postulated by Neely Fuller Jr. And there was a 10th one added on by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing.
Yes.
And when we talk about freedom, some of the ways that we look to get freedom is by removing ourselves from some of these areas of activity, right? So we'll go over some of them. Because of the show, the major area of activity because of this show and this network you want to try to remove yourself from is economics. And that's what Bitcoin is. It's supposed to give you economic freedom to be your own bank, right? But I'll mention some of the other areas of activity, be education, entertainment, what else? Labor, law. When you say law, it's kind of like the criminal court justice system. What else we got?
The penal system, yeah.
Politics, religion, sex, war, and the 10th one that was added on, which was a very good one that she did add on, is health, because health is part of your wealth, right? Lately, I go down my timeline, I've been seeing too many people, especially black men, dying in their 40s, sometimes late 30s, 40s, or 50s, and you're just seeing that over and over again. Somebody passed away here, somebody passed away there. And it's like, man, health is going to be a big part of your wealth building process. And it's one of the areas of activity because I don't want to go too deep, go too far off, but you know how the healthcare system is set up, and we are treated differently than the other people who
and our counterparts
who use the healthcare system, right? And so that's a part that you have to take into consideration in building your wealth is your health. But the two main ones we want to talk about would be health and economics.
Yes.
We want to just try to get this economic freedom, which before Bitcoin, because I spent a lot of time studying this, and we have removed our family from a good amount of these areas of operation. But economics was going to be the hardest one. It's like, well, there was no alternatives. Like, well, how can I get out of the economic system? You got to use legacy banking. I mean, there was no other way to go. And then once Bitcoin came along and these other coins, and you could start, peer-to-peer transfers, and you don't have to necessarily use the big banks and stuff like that. That gave us an option to say, oh, we could pull out of the economic system. You don't have to just only, if you want to invest, buy stocks or bonds or buy real estate. Now you can invest in something that's permissionless, and nobody really knows that you have it, and that's a good thing for me because I'm trying to move in silence. I'm off the radar. I don't want people knowing too much. I just move, in and out. Um,
But it's nice when you have to do large financial transactions.
mhm.
There's typically the necessity to have a full disclosure. I have to tell you how much income we have every year or how much income we have coming during the month. This is where the money's coming from. This is where the money's going to. This is who, everybody needs to know absolutely every move you make when you're doing financial transactions. And with Bitcoin and leveraging your assets for collateralized loans.
Yeah.
Like we did that with our Ethereum. And we didn't have to disclose anything. I mean, I filled out a quick short form and I had to even put my social security number on it, I don't think.
No, you do have to do
I
that.
did.
Yeah,
I
you
did
do
put
have
my
to put
social on
social.
there.
Yep.
But like it didn't really ask a lot of questions like if you were going to fill out a loan from the
Yeah,
bank.
but it wasn't about your income, where you worked, how much you
Right.
made, how much debt you owed. It was just, do you have the collateral?
Yes.
Yeah, we got to take some general information. Yeah, you did have to put on your social security
I did.
number,
Okay.
stuff like that, your address. But as soon as we finished filling out the loan,
The money was there
yeah, I
like
went.
30 minutes
Yeah, I went and
later.
took a nap. I woke back up. It was in the bank account.
Yeah,
So
so
it's an easy process. People don't have to probe everything about you
right.
and look at, there was no credit score, no credit check.
And you weren't asking for permission to see if you were going to get approved or not. Like that wasn't what the process was. The process was just when am I going to get the money? And it was about 30 minutes later. Whereas when people are typically applying for loans, it's am I going to be approved or are they going to turn it
Right.
down? Do I need a cosigner? Right? Like, do I need people to fill out stuff in order to.
And it's just a strategic move because say if you did it for, we'll keep the numbers short, $10,000,
Mhm.
right? So you would have to collateralize $20,000 worth of either Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Mhm.
Really, but the strategy is you already had the money.
Right.
You just don't want to sell your asset
Right.
for fiat. So let me collateralize my asset
Mhm.
and get fiat and do what I need to do with
To
it.
do.
And then once you pay the loan off over a certain amount of time, then you will still get your asset back, right? If you needed $10,000, you could have just sold half the Ethereum or Bitcoin and had the $10,000. But you want to keep your asset and use the fiat because the fiat's going to go down over time and your asset's going to go up over time. So it's a strategic way to use a loan to do things that you need to do, and we found it beneficial in our lifestyle. Now we're not an advocate. We're not saying we don't work for these companies. We're not trying to tell you to go do that. But we're just saying it's something strategically that we've done a couple times, and it's worked out well, and it's continually to work well.
Right. And for those of you who aren't familiar with how economics works, how debt works, how the Federal Reserve works, we have two videos. It's going to be right there in the description box that where we talk about it during a master class, exactly how the Federal Reserve banking came into be and how that was really an assault on the people, right? And then we also talk about how legacy banking gets rich by creating debt. So that way you can see how these systems are basically designed to assault you in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? We talked about economic freedom, but then you talked about health. And we don't ever want our shows to spiral down a rabbit hole, but we have to bring all of these things together because what happens is people's worldviews, especially when they don't move around a lot, it becomes really myopic. It's very small and you're missing all of these other different perspectives, whereas the system has the bigger picture to come against you.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about health, it's not just the healthcare system, but it's also the assault on you with the food and the consumption, the
And
commercials.
and we got to go there. It's got to be mental health. A lot
Mhm.
of people in our community, their mental health isn't where it should be, and you live in such a toxic society that
Yeah,
you don't even know that your mental health isn't there.
right.
I talk about when we moved here, when we left the United States and just started seeing other countries. It takes you a while to decompress
Yeah.
from the stuff that you were used to in the United States.
Mhm.
And you're like, like you come over there, you're kind of tense. You have a certain reaction to certain things, and it's like, hey, it's not even like that over here.
Mhm.
And it took me a while just to decompress and be like, oh, okay. And just mental health. I mean, mental health is a big thing. We could see it all
Mhm.
over the United States. You see all these videos that go viral, people melting down. Your mental health is very,
Very
very
important.
important. And people, I think, don't know when you live in a sick society and you have adjusted to that sick society
Mhm.
that that doesn't mean you're mentally healthy,
Mhm.
right? Because the society is sick and you have adjusted your mentality to fit in so that you can get by in the society doesn't mean that your mental health is where it should be.
Right.
So, mental health is big. It's paramount.
Right.
Mental health is paramount.
And that's what we talk about. Wealth
Hmm.
is a mindset.
Hmm.
So if your mental health is disturbed and your
Yep.
physical health is disturbed, your emotional health, which does tie into your mental health,
Yep.
gets disturbed. Your spiritual health, right? You
Yep.
can have all the money in the world and be spiritually impoverished. It is going to affect you. You see all of these celebrities where you're like, y'all got a lot of paper, but good Lord, right? So we want to just have all of these things on the table so that we can analyze them, discuss them.
Hmm.
When we start bringing things to people's attention, that's when the light bulb goes off and they're like, you know what? I never considered that, or I never even thought anything was wrong, really, right?
Right.
Because you're just so used to doing it's outside looking in, where you just assume I'm just so used to this, it didn't dawn on me that this isn't right. Now, for a lot of people know things aren't right,
Right.
and they're trying to fight against it.
Hmm.
But what are you fighting against? Are you familiar with the areas of operation you should be cognizant of
Got
so that you can fight against it? And we would implore you to research for yourself. We'll put the link in there, but we want you guys to research for yourself the areas of operation. How do these areas dominate your lifestyle,
it. Hmm.
your family, your potential for wealth building, wealth generation, wealth maintenance?
Hmm.
And how can you mitigate against some of these areas? How can you circumvent them? How can you evade them? Um, we wanted to bring that up.
Oh yeah, I just want before we get out of here on
Mhm,
that one. When we just talked about seeing these people who I think are far too young to be transitioning,
mhm,
we have to keep bringing this up. Your paperwork must be right,
mhm.
right? If you have life insurance, it has to be right. Life insurance, your assets, if real estate, Bitcoin, the wallets, it has to be right. It has to be tightened up. It's not something you can get to tomorrow because
Right.
tomorrow might not come. One
Mhm,
day, tomorrow will not come for
mhm.
all of us. So
Right.
it's not even something to put off, right? You need to make sure that your paperwork is right and get it in order as far as making sure the people who actually need to get the wealth are going to receive it in case of your demise, right? So I just see it a lot. You never know if people's paperwork is tightened up, but you just always wonder, like, man, I
Mhm,
hope they had that tightened up so the daughter, because like we said, we've dealt with it, both of us dealt with it extensively, and it becomes a mess. Little things, just little things, little things. I had to deal with something with my mom, and
mhm.
just something as small as me having my middle initial or not made a big
Can make
difference.
all the
So
difference.
you got to make sure it's tightened up so that the people will get what they need to get, right? If you can't build all this wealth for it only to go to a third party and not get to where it needs to go, right? So that's what I just want to keep talking about. I want to keep reiterating the paperwork. Make sure if you have some sort of wealth, get the paperwork in order. And as you grow older, you may have to keep changing the paperwork because a child may get older, a child may get married, so all of a sudden they have significant others. You might have grandchildren. You got to get the paperwork in order and stay on top of it. I remember, I used to, like I said, I was a firefighter, and you would have certain kind of benefits, right? And sometimes people would get married and divorced, remarried, divorced, and they didn't go back to some old paperwork, and maybe the
Oh
beneficiary
yeah,
was
an ex-wife.
an ex-wife, and
God.
then something happened to them, and the current wife doesn't get anything because he didn't fix his paperwork. You got to have your paperwork in order if you got assets. I mean, and stay on top of it. It is very, very important to stay on top of that paperwork.
But that goes into the areas of operation, the legal areas,
That's the legal
because
and economic.
what they do is they make the paperwork and the laws concerning your assets and your wealth so bureaucratic that not initialing here is a problem.
Yeah.
Not having your middle initial can keep your significant other or your family members from gaining. It's a way for them to say, oh, guess what? We get to keep it because you didn't do what we told you to do, or you didn't do it the way it was supposed to be done. This isn't the proper will for, because we've seen that before,
Yeah, we've
right?
seen
This
that.
isn't the proper will. This isn't the current will. Well, how do you know there's a current will?
Right. How you know if one more
Right?
current will?
It's all of these little things in order to find ways for third parties to get their hands on your stuff.
So if you had a ledger with Bitcoin on it, and you just let the people who need it to have it say, "This is where I keep the ledger." So if something happened to me, you got it. Go get it. These are the keys. You got it. You can keep it moving. You don't have to get everybody involved. Don't have to be a whole bunch of lawyers and this and probate court.
Right.
It's just boom. This is where I keep it. You know, like have a safe or somewhere, and they can just get to it and use it as they see fit. And that's what we're talking about. That's the part of being your own bank that is so important, because for us it's really about passing wealth down, right? Not getting it caught up in third parties and the middleman. Passing the wealth down. Hey, if something happened to me, go grab this. You got that. Like we talk about the physical silver. We keep a lot of physical silver in our home. You can grab that. You don't have to wait for somebody to okay you. No, if you need that, go grab it. Go do what you need to do with it. And that's just what we want to keep reiterating. You know, that's the part of health, you know, the paperwork, you know, these areas of activity, the legal, the economic, that you got to really be on top of, because it's set up for you to lose.
Yes, it's set up for you
you
to
have
lose
to really, really stay on top of it. Keep it in your mind. I know a lot of people don't like to think about death or things like that, but I mean, it can happen any day, so you got to be ready every day. That's right. You know, what is the old saying? Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Right? Stay ready, have your paperwork lined up, make sure everything, you know, I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, so that your family can get it and it's not a money grab for those middlemen, and then, you know, you don't get everything, or they don't get everything they need to get. And also, this will be my last point. And also, if you say for instance you were a Bitcoin investor, and the person that maybe you want to leave it to doesn't know much about Bitcoin, isn't that interested in Bitcoin, you have to have it even more set up,
mapped out,
because they won't know
with instructions
what they're looking at. So you're gonna have to have that. Like I implore you to teach, you know, whoever you might be leaving it to, or your children, about Bitcoin. But still, if they don't care, they're not into it, you got to have it mapped
But
out.
I'm
Like
going
she
to
said.
say this too. I think you should have it mapped out, because sometimes grief can work in a very strange way, right? Um, when deaths are unexpected, or worse, if they're tragic. When I say tragic, like something absolutely god awful happened, that person who naturally, normally may know, may have like what do I want to say? Like your mind's not working right. I know how to work the wallet. I can't remember like grief will sometimes occur in very strange ways. So I would implore you to, whether they know it stone cold or not, have it mapped out in case grief takes that weird toll on them. Okay, I don't even remember what wallet we use, because you're just so anxious and stuff's happening. You may be in shock still. It may be like a lot of different things going on. Have it mapped out. Have a place, whether it's handwritten or something that you keep in the house in the safe, or however you want to do it. I think the step by step would be important for that person. I think you should also have like a backup person. So in our case, we're the backup people, and then our son is the backup.
Well, and I've been asked on a few occasions about having maybe like a lawyer. I guess that would be up to each individual. What she's saying would make sense in the regard that the lawyer is a third party who is not grieving and can just take care of the business as need be.
Neutral.
So you have the neutral party, but you'll have to, you'll have to pay them, of course, but you'll have to trust that they will do the right thing. So if you feel okay with the lawyer, then it's not a bad option, but that's something you really have to look into in each individual
and
case.
Figure out, does that work for you? If you have that person who does well, I'm one of those people, unfortunately. I hate to say it, but I do well under pressure. I do well in times of grief. I wish sometimes I could just sit back and grieve with the rest of them. Don't get to. If you have a person like that and you can identify them, then that's also a great backup.
Yes, that is. If you identify them and you can trust them, right? Because you're talking about a wealth transfer. Yes, that is great to have. But we don't want to just talk about death too much. But it's coming
important.
up.
It's
coming up a lot.
Because people aren't talking about it that we keep bringing it up.
Yeah.
Right. So recently, a major influencer passed away. It took 2 days to figure out if he passed or not. Right? Because he didn't have that person in place he was supposed to have. Yep. Also, as a major influencer, our content creators, our brethren on the channels, make sure you have, if you guys are getting monetized on your own channels and stuff like that, you have the backup to receive the multiple streams of income that come along with what you do as an influencer, right? Because if your YouTube dashboard is locked up, you're still getting the views, you're still getting the ads. Who's getting the money now?
Yeah.
Right? So you need to have those things in place. And relatively young people, let's be honest, they don't think about these things.
Yeah, you got to think about it.
And I said to him the other day, I said, I almost feel like our mortality rate has dropped. People are passing away at 40 and 50.
Like regularly. It's like almost regularly.
Consistently. Right? And I'm concerned that somehow, some way, especially with the coronavirus pandemic, I feel like we're looking and the mortality rate has dropped. Whether that's true or not true, let's stay ready so we don't have to get ready. So wealth is not wasted. And these are all the different ways that the system takes the wealth back. They'll tell you that's such a morbid conversation. You guys are in your early 30s. You don't have to have this conversation. You know why? Because when you don't have the conversation, that wealth goes right back to the legacies. And you know what they do? They take your wealth and they give it to their legacies. Yep. And every time we talk about things like this, we just want you to remember, if the money's not going to you and your family, it's going to somebody else who's making sure that their family has it. Yep. That's part of the war, right? They're getting spoils. They're getting the king's ransom. Yep. And we have to be diligent. We have to keep these discussions going.
Can I, well, I just want to add, I'm just spitballing now, it's off the top of the head. But also for families, and when we talk about having that other person, we talk about building with other families, right? Yeah. So if I'm a man, a husband, father of children, I may want to build with another family, another husband, and we have a pact, like. And
shout out to the chief.
Chief.
That's who we got the pact with.
Chief got me. Chief got me. So if something happens to me, it's like I got you.
We have a fail safe.
And if something happened to him, I got you. Fail-safe. Right? That's how it used to be back in the day. Remember, if a woman became a widow, usually a family member, typically a brother, would come and take care of the widow. Take care of what needed, take care of the children. So we have family pacts where it's like another family that's not our family specifically, like blood.
But it is.
It's not our blood family, but it's somebody that if something happened to me, I know that he could come in and take care of some of the stuff and be that party where she can just grieve. And vice versa, if something happened to him, and we could stick around, and I got 4 sons. You could stick around, be the maybe a male father figure in their life, and we got to build these kind of pacts with family and friends, so that in the case of our demise, because it's imminent, right? It's gonna happen. Somebody else could be there and help and take care of it and take on some of the brunt and the weight of that, responsibility. And so we, that want to be strategic in that way. If you haven't thought about it, think about it, look around, see people maybe that you trust enough that
You can
that you
identify
can
to do
identify.
that.
Remember, isn't that what godparents were? If
But
something
I was
happened,
just going to say
yeah.
that, right? Again, there's a war going on. No man
Mm-hmm.
is safe. These
Safe
are
zone.
we have to, and we're tying it into the shout out to the veterans, right? When you did your military service, they taught you fundamental things in order not just for wartime, but really for your life. And a lot of us didn't pick up on it till later, right? So we really want to just kind of run that back to the original point. Like, everybody needs to be a veteran at this point. I don't even mean to serve the United States. I mean to serve your family, right? There's no Geneva Convention code because society, the dominant society, platform of white supremacy, they are not playing by that code. They are by any means necessary. You have to be by any means necessary too. And it may mean moving it really is traditional. I shouldn't say a non-traditional manner. That is what people used to do back then. That's what your comrade was. When you died in war, your comrade held your family down. Even if that means I don't have the money to support them, but I'm going to go check on your wife. I'm going to check on your children. If there's something I can do, if I need to mow her lawn, if I need to help fix the washer, I'm going to do. My comrade died in war. We were war buddies, yada, yada, yada. That's where the comrade came from, right? And it's actually a very old tactic that that men had taken on because they knew just how short life was in those days. So yeah, if you have a very close friend, even just that handshake agreement, like, hey, we just got to have each other's back. We have to form the community that we used to be.
Yeah, and you remember it went the other way back in the day because think about the women. The number one killer of women was childbirth.
Yeah.
So then you had to have that comrade of a woman who would come and help you raise that child, right? So we have to have, typically men will die before women, right? Typically. But that's not always the case. So it could be, it could be that the man is here without the woman, and you got to have that family comrade situation set up where somebody can come in and help. And just we're a big family. We got to find ways so that we can get through this, right? Got to have your paperwork in order. You got to have, and that's when I say paperwork, that's paperwork. We have a gentleman's agreement. It wasn't no paperwork signed, but I'm gonna do what I got to do, and he would do what he got to do. That's our paperwork being in order. I'm gonna take care of that if you need me to, and I'll take care of what you need me to. And that's just we have to build. That's part of building wealth. If you're building wealth, you still have to protect the wealth. That's part of the protection of the wealth.
And the last thing one of the last points I want to make is you want to have a solidified portfolio, just like back in the day, said diversify your portfolio, right? You want to diversify your basket. You want to have assets, physical assets that you can just hand over to someone. And you also want to have the stuff that requires some documentation, some paperwork, which is what we have, right? The silver that we own, I can hand my children right now. I don't need a third party involved. I can divvy it up and say, this is for you, this is for you, this is for you, however we want to do it, right? We have a nano ledger. That's literally just handing over the property, right? This is for you, this is for you. Make sure it gets broken up, however you want to do it. And then, again, Simon Family Investment Ventures, we're not totally crazy. We do have life insurance that requires documentation. I have my beneficiary set up. I have my other beneficiaries set up so that, God forbid, because we also have to be very realistic that if, God forbid, something happens, it could be both of us. So we have to be very, very, very realistic in the point where our oldest son is in charge of doing whatever he needs to do. So diversify your portfolio in that way. Have something physical you can hand over without getting a third party involved. And then you have your documentation where a third party may need to be involved. It just depends on what your lifestyle is. But I do suggest that a way to mitigate one of these areas of activity is if you're your own bank, that means without a third party involved as the adult, you can say, you get this, you get this, you get that. And we leave things of value. Too many people pass away and don't leave anything of value. You have a house full of glass unicorns. Why? I'm glad you have them. They made you happy. But you know what? When you passed away, you left us with the task of hitting people up with a GoFundMe. right? You're going to order the glass unicorns, order you some silver unicorns, get you some ounces,
Yes.
right? Get you some Bitcoin unicorns, okay? Whatever you need to do, don't leave people a mess. Be responsible in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
You spent over a half a century on this earth, have something to show for it,
Yes.
right? Just as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Have that outcome that my life wasn't just whatever mess I left upon my transition.
Yeah.
So we really, especially if you bring other lives into the world, I think you
Mm-hmm.
owe them that.
You owe them that. You definitely owe them that.
Now, for the people who don't bring anybody into the world, however that falls out, I still say as an adult, leave something. Leave something.
Right.
For our content creators, we want to tell you, leaving that digital imprint is just as important as assets,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our children will get to watch these videos, get to see their mom and their dad in their prime. Like, oh, listen to their voice. I didn't forget what your voice sounded like when you transpired. And when you transpired.
Yep.
When you transition, right?
Start to sweat.
Right? It's an inside Cincinnati Fire Department joke, right?
My bad.
Shout out to the Cincinnati Fire Department, by the way. When you expired or transitioned, right? I just kind of threw it in there together. The digital imprint is just as valuable. You are chopping up good game. You are teaching.
Mm-hmm.
It is wisdom, right? And for my metaphysical people, understand that wealth is the physical representation of wisdom, right? You pay a plumber to come because his wisdom, he knows how to fix the plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
So you are exchanging physical wealth for a metaphysical wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you pay for a professional service, that transfer is just the physical transfer to a spiritual transfer. So understand that wealth is extremely spiritual,
mm-hmm.
right? I'm not going to dig down in that rabbit hole unless y'all want to have that conversation, hit us up. But just understand what your journey encompasses. Mm-hmm. We are here for more than whatever we do from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Right? It's not to be mixed up. You do this for a living. You are not this. Yeah. Right? But what we are protectors. We are providers. Mm-hmm. We are supposed to be teachers. We are supposed to be mothers and fathers in more sense than in a physical aspect, right? So we really want to be able to contribute those things to our journeys. And in doing that, we mitigate those areas of dominance. Mm-hmm. We're going to have that link in the description. I would love for you guys to really go in and research these areas. It's one of the reasons why we're not digging down into it too deep, because we want you guys to do the work for yourself and decide, like, if you have questions, we can chop it up, we can have discussions, but what areas should, and I'm not saying focus on all of the areas at once.
And understand there's 10 areas, but depending on your lifestyle, you may not be affected by all of them. Mm-hmm. So you have to look at your lifestyle and say, which areas am I being dominated by? The most, right? And then you say, okay, how can I mitigate some of this? How can I get out of some of these areas, right? Because if you don't have children, education, the school to prison pipeline isn't a big concern for you, right?
Or even just the education.
Yeah. Right. If you've already had a war, war is something that you can't really, war is a moneymaker. You can't really mitigate that, right? But if you have to go to war and physically fight the war, then that's something you got, people, they were talking about bringing back a draft, right? So your sons could be drafted to go to war, right? So you got to see these areas that affect you the most and see how maybe you can't remove yourself totally, but you can lower some of the exposure that you have to those areas. Right. And it'll get some better outcomes. You'll definitely get some better outcomes.
But it can be something as simple as he talked about war, right? War needs to be financed. Who finances war? We the people. Right. So a way to just kind of lower or lessen your exposure is be on top of your taxes, right? If you have a sole prop, know what your tax exemptions are. Mm-hmm. Know what you can write off and what you can't write off, and use that to your advantage. Do the things you need to do to lower your income status so that you can kind of lessen your exposure to finance and whatever it is they're using the money for. There was something else you said that made me think. The school to prison pipeline, right? You want to lessen your exposure. Maybe you think about homeschooling.
Yeah.
Right. And they have so many programs and stuff now. It's a lot easier to do than it was 20 years ago. So it's a way to maybe filter the influence that your children have. Because I'm going to tell y'all right now, we were talking about growing up in school, and we went to school with some badass kids, right? You think about it, like, y'all was on the block selling drugs. We live on Long Island. What y'all doing, right? Versus when your kids are homeschooled, you have a lot more direct influence over them, and not to protect them or shield them, but they don't have a bunch of idiots influencing them to do dumb stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So you're lessening the exposure in that sense. Well, you got the bullies and the cyber bullies and the this and the that and the third, and it's all of this chaos, but you can just lessen some of that when you operate just a little bit differently. So like he said, you start going down and say, how can this influence us? And what are some of the ways we can lessen our exposure? And again, that's a case-by-case basis.
And so please do us a favor.
Oh boy.
In the comments, just tell us what you want to talk about, what you like, what you want to hear more about. Mm-hmm. If there's things that you want us to elaborate on, because, like I said, we don't know the demographics, which is, we're talking.
We're learning, though, because a lot of you have been telling us who you are, so thank you.
So we didn't want to keep you too long. We want to go ahead and get out of here. Like we said, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. Have a blessed Mother's Day. And salute to all our veterans. And we'll see you on Wednesday.
And the kids dropped in on you guys. You probably see them a lot more, so sorry for that. But we are a family, so from time to time they will interrupt the show. We love y'all. Bye.